Hello, my name is Marcus Solbes-Moran. I am a student with Dr. Quintana's oral history class, and here with me today is Dr. Enrique Buelna for his interview, for a oral history interview. It is a pleasure to meet you, Doctor, and have you all here today.
Well, well, thank you very much, Marcus. I'm excited about this. Thank you for considering me for this interview.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Um, so to begin, I would just like you to introduce yourself, if you may.
Yeah, do you want me to go ahead and answer that first question, or do you want to?
I suppose this could be a probably a good first question is just to I guess just before we get into where you were born, just stating your name and any other information that you feel is important to the viewers.
So my name is Enrique Buelna, and I'm a faculty member here at Cabrillo College. I'm in the history department. Sort of the areas that I teach, my areas of expertise are in Chicano history, labor, 20th century U.S. history, civil rights, identity politics. Those are race, class. Those are the different things that I focus on in the courses that I teach there. I've been at Cabrillo College for about 20 years now. And when I'm not teaching in the classroom, I'm an op-ed writer along with my brother. So we write opinion pieces for LA Taco and some other publications, but LA Taco gives us one heck of a lot of viewers. So we get a lot of
Wow.
people responding and engaging with those pieces. And I'm also a screenwriter. So I just completed my second screenplay, which has gained some finalist status. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I'll be working on that over the summer. So
Wow.
and then continue my artwork, of course.
Wow, amazing. Congratulations on your success with screenwriting and editorial writing as well.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, now to begin with the written questions I have here. When and where were you born?
So I was born in Southern California in the city of Glendale, but I grew up in Los Angeles. I have no idea. I don't even remember why we ended up, how my parents got ended up in Glendale. I think it had something to do with the insurance. But that's where I was born, born 1964. I am the oldest of four, but I grew up in LA. Didn't leave home until undergraduate school at UC Santa Barbara.
Wow. Well, what was it like growing up in Los Angeles at the time?
Well, I mean, so I grew up in the 1970s and the 1980s. So I we grew up largely in South LA or South Central, South now it's called. But basically I was looking at the community. So basically I grew up near Lamert Park, so that would be or now it's called Vermont Square, but in other words it would be near Crenshaw, Martin Luther King Boulevard, Vernon. It was largely an African American community when I was growing up, and in fact when I was a kid, I still recall white folks living in the community, but I mean, really quickly disappeared. And I think most of them were passing away, and the houses were bought up by black families. So I grew up, in a black neighborhood. We were the only Chicanos in the neighborhood. I ended up going to a local school, 42nd Street School for a little bit, but it was rough. It was pretty rough living in the community. So it was a mix of middle class African American homes, but also poor. There was again 1970s, 1980s, so there was a lot of gang violence, sadly. In the area with, I mean, you had both Bloods, Crips, all of that going on all around us. And I don't even know how I survived. But my parents quickly took me out of public school and put me in Catholic school. So the local Catholic. And what's interesting is that the congregation was largely African Americans, African American Catholics, and again, we were the only Chicano family in that church. That's Transfiguration Church, which was on Martin Luther King Boulevard and Broxton Avenue. And then let me see, and then high school. Again, it either would have been Manual Arts or Crenshaw High School. In both those places, I probably would have gotten my butt kicked. So my parents took me to private high school. And the high school that I went to was towards the west side. So had to take two public transportation, two buses, two public buses to get there, and that was to St. Bernard High School. So I ended up, and the same thing for my younger brother. So we went to private, elementary school, and then private Catholic high school. So but it was rough. I mean, both my parents are immigrants, both of them from Mexico, right? So my dad's from Sonora, my mom's from Sinaloa. My growing up there, I we spent a lot of time traveling from LA to Tijuana, visiting my mom's family. My dad's family's from Sonora, right? Nogales. We did less over there, but the memorable memories that I have was going to a small pueblo, a small town in Sonora called Ures. So it's basically, just a small dusty town, and we would go out to a ranch out there. So we spent some summers out at a ranch called Bamuco in just outside of Ures. And Ures, let me just give you some. Most of the town buildings were made out of adobe. So just to give you a
Wow.
sense, but beautiful, beautiful place. My memories of there are just fantastic. So again, it was TJ, Tijuana. We'd visit out there, visit family. So, I got to see and experience both Mexico a lot, and then living in South Central. So, both my dad, both of my parents, well, my mom stayed at home mostly. And it's because we have the third brother. So I'm the oldest of four. The third brother we got into an accident when he was only 3, and he lost the use of his legs. So that was
My.
very rough on my family, very rough on my mom. So we also I remember a lot of trips to the therapy, a lot of trips to seeing doctors. He had to go to an alternative school. So a lot of our lives revolved around his that injury and sort of, and helping him out, that type of stuff. But my dad was an upholster for most of the time that I was living at home. By the time I got to college in the early 1980s, his the industry in furniture basically closed down in Southern California. I won't go through those details, but my dad was able to luckily get a job at the LA Times. So he was a janitor at the LA Times, and basically that's the job that saved our family. I was able to get some help during college. But that's sort of my, hey, I survived, so I didn't get my butt kicked growing up in South Central. So, um, no, yeah, so I did get my butt kicked in school, but that's okay. It was Catholics, so it's all right.
Oh my.
So
Um,
I don't know if that's helpful, but those are that's some of my background there, growing up there
that's
in LA.
amazing. Wow. That's quite a lot of events that happened there. And all of it is good. We want to center your experiences during this interview too. So everything, all of your experiences are welcome, and we want to have them voiced here. But okay.
Interestingly,
Mhm.
part of the question, do you remember any particular episodes, right? You also ask in the question.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
Go ahead.
No, no. Yes, that was part of question two. You kind of seamlessly went into that while answering question one was but yeah, are there any episodes of note from your upbringing? I mean, you
No, the
listed
only
quite a
thing
few
that,
of them, but
what's interesting is that despite the fact that we ended up going to Catholic schools, probably to save our butts, but we did attend church, right? We would go Sundays to church as a family. And even later on, I was an altar boy for a few
Oh,
years. So was my brother, right? We were altar boys, and so we would do end up doing masses without our parents. But interestingly, about my parents, both of them are immigrants, but they were never um how can I say, they were never yeah, yeah, maybe the word might be devout sort of Catholics, right? They always questioned the church. And what's interesting is that I got two sort of different opinions, or two different sort of sides of the story. My dad was very much a product of the history of the Mexican Revolution. So he was always, and the Mexican Revolution, really tried to put the church in its place,
of course.
um, questioning corruption and so on and so forth, and what role would the church have in Mexico in the future. So my dad was always pretty critical of corruption within the church. And so in other words, so he would go to church, but he didn't take shit from any priest or anything like that. If anybody was gonna, let me put it this way: my parents never agreed with paying what's called tidings. I
Tithes,
forget
right?
what was that.
Tithes, I
Right.
think it's
So
called.
never paying, my dad sort of refused. And so I'd love the conversations. He goes, I'm not gonna pay, I already pay them, for the tuition for school. I'm not gonna pay them anymore. He never agreed to that. So what's interesting, and then the politics of sort of questioning even church authority was pretty interesting to me. And even my mom, to a certain degree, was kind of like that. So she was always breaking traditions. So she kept some traditions, but she always sort of broke them. So my parents were not heavy on religion, and that ended up influencing me in terms of sort of my politics and sort of my identity as well. Because my dad was very strongly Mexican, right? Despite the fact that, my goodness, they've probably been living here in this country longer than they had in Mexico, they were very much, very strong. And so I ended up getting a lot of sort of my political views, sort of religious views from those experiences that they had. So anyway, so I just wanted to share that part.
No, please
So
do.
that certainly is going to have an influence on me later on.
I guess to build off that, does your family have any historical memory of the Mexican Revolution, like in terms of what side they may have fought on? Any stories from them
Yeah,
that passed on from the
so my
generations?
grandfather did was involved, and was fighting on the side of the revolutionaries. So, but there's some confusion. There's not confusion, but certainly there were those who gained property, who had property, gained property later on as a result of participation in the revolution, but certainly were involved sort of on the revolutionary side, because Nogales is a border city. There was involvement with my great grandfather, with local militias that helped to obviously protect the border. And there were incidences, there were historical incidences, several of them in which there were crossings, illegal crossings by U.S. federal troops. There were
Wow.
shootouts. There was a lot of tension there. So that's certainly a part of it. We didn't get any of that property. Much of that property would be lost to complicated family interactions. We didn't get any of that. Neither did my dad, sadly. But certainly all of that was up. So those who did take part in the revolution certainly benefited from it in terms of land and property, but we did not get any of that. So
Oh, wow. Um, that's incredible. I mean, um, well, I mean, we've just been moving so far in this conversation that I guess the next question I have written here is how would you say your upbringing shaped your view of the world? But it seems like you already touched upon that. But if you want to elaborate on a little bit on that, that would be